My name's Ashley Patino. I own Pizza Bones, located here in Richmond, Virginia. I'm from Virginia originally. I grew up in Northern Virginia. I always liked having dinner parties at other people's house, or they come to my house, and I was always broke essentially. So pizza was just like, I didn't even want to pay for pizza. I was like, I'll just make pizza, and I made really, really bad pizza, and it was just a way to have people come over and be fed and everyone's satisfied, and it's a non-issue. It's just a party and a means to the end of getting together. And I think that's where pizza came into play. I moved to San Francisco, and I was really lucky and got a job at Tartine before I moved to San Francisco. Like, I didn't know that ladies could make bread. I don't know why I thought that. I suppose it's a reflection of the like underrepresentation of women bakers, and moving to San Francisco and staging at the mill, and there's like all lady bakers on bread, and that changed my perspective. And I did pastry at Tartine for a year before switching to bread, and everyone kind of knew that I was really into pizza. It was like they almost didn't let me on the bread team because they were like, it's not the same. I sort of pursued it anyway, and was able to play around with different grains and try out pizzas to feed the staff. And that was kind of the whole idea, I guess, was to move somewhere else, get more experience, get knowledge, get grounded, and then bring it back. I got the space in 2020, but we didn't open until 2021, and we've been growing ever since. That was the plan, was to come back to Richmond and open Pizza Bones, because I love it here. I think the community is unmatched. It's so supportive, and it's so small, and it's so dynamic and diverse. I think what's hard about running a business is it's all me. It's just so much. It's like everything that should be, or feels like it should be, so simple, whether it's like having a party or putting something new on the menu, becomes this multi-layer challenge of like, how are people gonna know, and where are we gonna store the things, who's gonna prepare it, and how are we gonna package it? And then it's like a whole mind game. But I have a lot of help, you know, whether it's from employees or friends I've met over the years within Richmond or out of Richmond. And I look around and I see how many friends of mine own businesses, and it's a lot. And we all talk about it, and we understand the struggle or what's going on. Or I think there's this general air of being supported and being supportive. It's a small community that we all kind of help each other out. When I was in high school, I like watched Food Network, and I wanted to be a baker and open my own bakery. But, you know, things played out differently, and I wanted to make pizza because I just wanted to inspire community, and I always want to find this balance between health and like feeling good and being satisfied, and just sort of, I call it kind of balance between healthful and gluttony. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Aveen Dogu, and I am a baker and owner of Sub Rosa Bakery, a bakery in Richmond, Virginia. And today we're going to be talking with Ashley Patino, a fellow business owner down the street and owner of an excellent pizza restaurant, Pizza Bones.
Hey, Veen.
Yeah, Ashley, for being here. That was a wonderful video. I think it gave a lot of insight into a lot of what Richmond is and a lot of what you do for Richmond. So I was thinking we could start by having you just explain a little bit more about how you even ended up in Richmond.
Yeah, totally.
To open your business.
Yeah, because I'm from Virginia, but I grew up in Northern Virginia, just outside of DC. And then I came down to Richmond to go to college at VCU. I have two older sisters who also went to VCU, and so by the time it was my turn to go, it was just kind of a no-brainer. I'm going to Richmond. I've already have some friends there. I'm familiar with the layout, and I can't wait to get a little bit further from home and into Richmond.
Definitely. And when you first moved to Richmond to study at VCU, did you think, okay, when I'm done with school, I want to open a bakery or a pizza restaurant, or I want to become an entrepreneur, or like most college kids in America, were you a little undecided?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I have to admit that I don't really use my degree. I studied social relations, and minored in Italian, and I had always had to work while I was in school. And I think I just sort of fell in love with the kitchen and how rewarding and satisfying it is to serve people and have that gratification feedback loop. And so I was always sort of a home baker. And even in high school, yeah, I guess I did have a dream of owning my own bakery, but somehow that turned to pizza still.
Yeah, that was actually, you mentioned that in the video. And as a baker myself, I was curious about that transition. And while I do know you still bake wonderful things, I know on Saturday mornings, Ashley bakes in the morning out of her pizza restaurant. But I was wondering if you could touch upon a little bit the transition from wanting to bake baked goods to pizza, because there's a lot of overlaps, but they are kind of different animals as well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of my will for simplicity and streamlining. And I don't know if it came across on the video either, but I am sort of a slow processor, and I have to like really think things through and to figure them out. And I don't have a ton of experience working in restaurants, so it is kind of odd, I guess, that I now own what is on paper a restaurant, but I have a hard time calling it that. I just say pizza spot or pizza place, or pizza hole, pizza not restaurant, but it is a restaurant.
Definitely. Yeah, actually, I was also curious about your leaving Richmond. In the video, you talk about going to Tartine. And for those of you who haven't heard of Tartine, it's one of the most established, highly esteemed bakeries in all of America. Can you tell us a little bit about how you ended up there, and how you and why you decided to start working on pastry there before venturing into the bread pizza world?
Yeah, because before I left Richmond, I didn't have a ton of baking experience. I mostly worked in coffee. And then that's when I apprenticed at Sabrosa.
Oh, that's right.
to get my hands dirty. And the passion, I think, is contagious. And I remember you calling it bake therapy once. And I think timing is really important. And when I wanted to get out of Richmond and get more experience, I knew I didn't want to go to New York, because New York is kind of a scary place, I guess. And I felt like everyone kind of moves to New Coast, where I never heard anything bad about it aside from the cost of living, and thought if other people can do it, then I'll figure it out. Before I moved, I only had like a stage or a working interview set up at Tartine, and mostly because I knew someone and had Tartine had Sabrosa probably on my resume. I was pretty underqualified, I think, for that position, but I did it, and it was really, really challenging. And it is hard to work with that many people on such a level like that, with the amount of production that they do. But I am really glad that I started there on pastry, because it completely made me a better baker. And it was so intense with having to ask permission. I love logistics. I think it's so fascinating and exciting to have everything, that there's just so many things. And then when they finally all like fit together so nicely with the one or two ovens that are there, and asking for space and moving things around and just really pushing yourself was huge. And then going on the bread team, that's like where you go to relax and just like make bread and just sort of compete over Instagram crumb shots and get to goof around with the really, really goofy, sweet, interesting other bakers who are just trying to figure it out too.
Yeah, I have a very good idea of what you're talking about, because I was able to spend a couple of weeks at that bakery as well. You mentioned in the video when you went over to Tartine and to another bakery called The Mill, that you were really surprised at how many lady bakers there were. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I'm curious about why you were surprised, and why that made an impression on you of seeing so many women baking and making bread out there.
I guess because I hadn't really seen it before. I remember the guys from Bolted Bread coming up, and they're all just like, all the guys get together, and the same thing happens in the pizza world. It's like a lot of guys who congregate and sort of rule the conversation. And I think that's what I had only seen, whether it was even within books or TV or in real life, until moving to California. The Mill is such a really wonderful bakery that also does pizza in the evening, and I've been in that kitchen just a few times, but I always found it kind of intimidating, because the bakers are so cool.
Yeah, there definitely is that vibe. I totally know what you mean. So it sounds like you worked at 3 different places: Del Popolo, Tartine, and The Mill. And those are all in California, which is pretty different from Virginia. What can you tell us about the differences in the culture of the restaurant scene, bakery scene there versus here?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because that's true. Like, I haven't really worked much at this point in Virginia, aside from, my college jobs here and there, and in working in coffee. I just remember going out there, and it was kind of a more of a career change. And when I came back, it was with the direct intention of working for myself, basically. And in California, I don't know, or I guess in coming back to Virginia, I really wanted to bring that culture back with me. And I think that goes back to more bigger pictures, like state laws and norms. Like in California, we got a mandatory lunch break that was unpaid, but we all had a family meal and then had a lunch break that some people didn't really want to take, but I always enjoyed. And we had accrued paid time off, and we had health care in some form or another. And on top of that, there was also a really exciting bakery scene and wine scene. So that's why part of Pizza Bones is dedicated to wine, is because you have really amazing natural wine in California, and I wanted to bring that culture back to Richmond as well. And even the wine fair that's in the plannings later this year, a major part of that inspiration was direct from my California experience. And I think it all goes back to community, the wine community and the baker community. And I'm even thinking now, like, instead of a little bit kicking myself for doing a wine thing, and kind of wish I was doing a bread conference of sorts, and encouraging more of that, because I think there's definitely room for it, and pushing grain forward and pushing more baked goods forward in our area.
That's true. I do think we still have a long way to go, and who knows, maybe we can work on something like that together in the future. Yeah, actually, hearing you talk about bringing wine to your pizza place and having this fair that you're working on later in the year, I do love how community oriented your restaurant is, and how it, even though you serve pizza and wine, you have a lot of other events and a lot of other gatherings outside of just serving pizza. Was that just an organic process of you deciding that Richmond needed something like that, or when you set out to open Pizza Bones, did you always kind of want it to be a place not just to gather for food, but for other events as well? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Totally. I remember putting it in my business plan, but it was, I don't know what portion of it I thought would be events. And it wasn't till like I had the space that I realized it's a lot of space. And even before we opened, I know our friends who own Thompson Farms set up out there because I think we also had like a big vendor market, because I figured if I can't use the space, then it would be great if somebody else could. And so everyone was just set up outside on the patio. And since we're now 2 years in, and only lately are there more and more requests for not only private parties like wedding rehearsal dinners, but also event submissions that people want to do. And it's a lot off my plate if someone else wants to organize it. And I just feel like everyone benefits, and there's nothing more exciting than that to me. And so, yeah, it was at least a small part of the plan. Sometimes in hindsight, I'm like, why didn't I just get like an 800 square foot small space? Because then I went to New York and ate pizza all over the place in the city, and you're just standing there at a table eating a slice, and everything is so small. And I was like, why do I have like such a giant space, or what feels like a giant space? But it's okay, we make do, and everybody's happy. And yeah, it was kind of part of it all along.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, it's New York is such a different place. I'm sure New Yorkers come to your pizza place and are like, why don't we have more space? We could do so much with it. Yeah. And I can say, as a fellow businesswoman and your neighbor just down the street, I know that the community really appreciates it, and there's always something happening at Pizza Bones. So, and I know that you did touch upon the community here and how you thought it was unmatched and how supportive it was. Can you give any examples of the kinds of, support you've gotten, or what that looks like for you? What you mean by how supportive the Richmond community is? Because that is, I agree, as a business owner, a unique aspect of owning a business in Richmond.
Yeah, it's different because I think it's a high barrier of entry, I think, as Evram would say. It's not easy, and especially if you don't come from money directly from one source or another. So I never knew, I still don't always know what I'm doing, but because we're all friends and know so many business owners, it's really just a phone call away to have that resource. So when it comes to, finding an HVAC person, or how to properly file a certain kind of tax, or I don't know, just asking to borrow some flour like we do. Zorch is another pizza place down the street, and when either of us runs low on cheese or pepperoni, we just, run over and drop off a case or whatever we need to get through the weekend. And it's nice knowing that I have his back, and hopefully he has mine,
Yeah, certainly. No, it's very nice. And I know we've done that as well. I just had to embarrassingly borrow flour from you, even though we provide flour to you. So
I feel like run out of cream on Saturday mornings, and I know when Ben Lee was there, I'm knocking on the door a lot.
Yeah, no, we're always there, at least for now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hearing you talk about, running out of things, and having to think about so many things also kind of made me want to ask you, as another business owner, what you find. You mentioned in the video that it's challenging running a business, and I guess I'm curious about having to work in the kitchen and run the business, and how you decide how much time to spend in each area, and how you kind of navigate it all.
Well, man, I feel like I have the same question for you. It's definitely an ongoing challenge and has evolved since we opened, where, I was definitely back there making pizza more often. And then I feel like you have to come to this realization where you can't just like make pizza and put your head down, and instead you have other operations that need to be taken care of and checked off the list. And so as I got more employees and got them trained on managing other tasks, whether it's making pizza or ringing people up, and they've all also come up with their own systems, for which I'm grateful for, since the beginning, and they're really good at their jobs, and I have a really amazing staff. So my role has slowly moved from just making pizza and to basically I like wash a lot of dishes and let them do the fun stuff. Well, I think washing dishes is kind of fun and satisfying, and yeah, I just I just want to be the support for them, is how I see my role. Whether they need to take a break or time off, or need me to run out and run a pizza or make a salad really quick. I really like being those sorts of hands and letting other people make the pizza, with the idea that they would prefer to do that, or that's more fun for them. And then now, because of all the events, I feel like I'm even less doing dishes and more event coordinator, which is cool and somewhat surprising. And also, yeah, it's fun. But it's definitely evolved over time. And I really only get to emails Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And otherwise I don't follow up, and I don't respond. Sometimes should I put one of those like out of office auto responses?
Yeah, in the kitchen. Maybe the auto response can be in the kitchen for the next 4 days.
Yeah.
I'll get to do it. I'm back out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
Good idea. I might do that myself. I guess what is, you kind of touched upon it just now, but what does a day in the life of Ashley Patino look like nowadays? I mean, I guess if you were just to kind of think about an average day, maybe just run us through the morning through the evening, or the evening through the next morning, or however it goes.
Yeah. It's funny because they are all kind of different days, and I have sort of a funny schedule. So yeah, Monday through Wednesday, I'm usually at home, working on like payroll and responding to those emails and getting the schedule tighter, because I haven't looked at it. And then Wednesday, like, we get deliveries, so I try to come in and have a helping hand, and just sort of like check in. Friday is my only day working pizza in the afternoon and doing prep for Saturday morning. I have like a pretty nice schedule, but as I'm talking about it, I'm like, is it complicated? I think it follows that whole line of sort of my evolution in terms of my job or position here at Pizza Bones. But I do have a pretty good work-life balance, and after probably 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, I'm free, and I do not do any more work. And usually that's either maybe going to the farmer's market and making dinner, or getting happy hour and going out for drinks with friends, because we all know a lot of people, and I'm a pretty social person. So I don't usually have to wake up too early, unless it's Saturday, and then I'm free. So I don't have to be here all the time, and I totally trust everybody who's here, and they've all worked here long enough that it's a pretty nice sustaining system. I'm mostly really the cleaning lady, I'm just a cleaning lady.
Lady with 1,000 other hats.
Yeah.
I do have just a few more questions, and then we'll take some questions from the audience over at AMC. But I guess I'm wondering, because I always wondered this about myself. I, in some ways, can't imagine being anything else but a baker. But sometimes I wonder what I would have become if I hadn't. So I'm wondering the same for you. What if you hadn't become a baker? What else do you potentially even see yourself being in the future?
Oh man, what a fun question. I always sort of joked that if I wasn't a baker, my sort of dream job would be some sort of aerobics instructor, like jazzercise. Like I love dancing around. Another thing that inspires joy is dancing. So I've kind of mostly joked about that, but in reality, I don't have a backup plan beyond pizza bones. I do have a pipe dream of opening a bagel spot sometime, somewhere, but if I wasn't in a kitchen, I don't know where I would be. My only other sort of hobby that could be turned into a job is sometimes I do ceramics, and that's pretty fun, but I'm not good enough at it to charge people.
Not now. That's how it all starts, right?
Yeah. Slow and sure.
Yeah, and I guess I'm also wondering, or if you could just briefly talk about, you said you love dancing. I feel like the audience would, or at least I would like to hear quickly about the dance parties at Pizza Bones. Maybe just give a little summary of how that looks, because as a resident of the neighborhood, it's super fun to walk by or participate in it.
Yeah, they are really fun. And sometimes I've scheduled them and I'm like, I don't really want to go back to work and have to be there again. But I never regret it. And they're always so fun. We have a couple different DJs that we work with, and we'll close. We started doing them I remember our first one was on a Monday. I don't know why. I think it's because we're closed on Tuesdays, and maybe we thought it was like a nice end to our week, and it felt like it was actually an event that was more for us than anyone else. Mm-hmm. And it's 3 hours, and we got a disco ball. That was like how and why we got a disco ball, with a couple of lights set up, and now we've got a fog machine and other fun lights, and it's definitely evolved, but it's just like 3 hours in the evening when you can just pop in and dance. You don't have to drink. A big patio. Lots of like funk and disco.
Yeah, always a good time. Any pushback from the neighbors?
Not well, a couple times. Yes, I'm supposed to let them know when we're doing it, and then I kind of stopped for a while because now we do them on Saturday nights, and I think that makes people less upset than if we did it on a Monday or a Sunday. If we go too late, then there's a little bit of pushback.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we're pretty good. I think we're pretty good at it, and most of the neighbors are pretty nice.
Yeah, I agree. As someone who lives in the neighborhood. This is kind of deviating from some of the topics that we're talking about, but who are some of the inspirational role models, or who are some people or friends and family who you've really drawn your inspiration from, I guess, over the years?
I guess I think of it in terms of who I want to be like and who I don't want to be like, I guess, and particularly people in the position of a manager, because I've never really been a manager professionally before this, and my mom was a manager for a long time, so she is good at giving advice. But otherwise, Crystal White, who trained me on bread at Tartine, was like just such an amazing balance of talent and fun and respect. It's somehow those people who like command respect and can also have fun, versus people who kind of suck the fun out of the room are not my ideal. But it is, I'm like, Evine, you are quite an inspiration. I don't know how you guys do as much as you do, and you are so humble. And I don't know, I rave about you all the time.
Thank you.
You're just an amazing baker and person. And even you were kind of one of the first people I worked for who not only like did a really good job at your job, but also the way you talk to people in such a focused way. And I think most of my work experience until then was managers, and I don't blame them for this. It's not really anything against them, but something that I noticed particularly about you was like a manner of talking that like to me in a focused way versus saying something and then like you can sometimes see people like not like sort of tune out and like start thinking about other things, and I'm sure I'm guilty of that at times. But those are all things that I notice and respect and take to heart. Usually I'm like, there's a lot of women. I look up to women and who are just strong and take anything and are not focused on being competitive, but instead are focused on a greater agenda.
Well, thank you for saying all that. And yeah, I agree. I mean, don't want to generalize too much, but there's definitely a different, like there can be different management styles between men and women and just different approaches, and they both have their value. But yeah, it sounds like you've had really good luck with the women in your industry. And I know just as a customer of Pizza Bones, it's really cool seeing some of the women who have started at the cash register now being the pizzaiolos, making the pizza. I don't know how much of that's just, it's so enticing to be back there at the oven baking, and they just can't help it when they see it, or that their in was to be a cashier before they moved on. But that is something I've noticed, that a lot of the women have ended up being the pizza makers. So
yeah, I think they're kind of down for anything. And then I have I don't know if I told you this before, but there was this Italian winemaker who came to Richmond, and he was sort of doing his rounds and stopping by different restaurants and things around town. And we were excited to bring him here because he's longtime one of my favorite winemakers. And he comes into the kitchen and he sees that Jessica is like working the pizza oven, and he goes, "A woman on the pizza oven? No way, never." He goes, "Never in Italy, a woman working the pizza oven." Like, I've never seen it. And I was like, if you walk back there, there's 2 more women back there.
you're going,
Oops. Yeah,
absolutely.
so funny. I think he meant it in a negative way. I feel like it felt very much related to the same way I didn't think that women could make bread before.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, it makes total sense. It's always good to break stereotypes down, and culturally it can, some places, have different representations of men and women in different fields. So I like it that in our fields of baking, those lines have become a little more blurred.
Right. Yeah. That's huge.
Okay. Well, I think it's time to maybe take some questions from our audience. Thank you for being patient and listening in. Let's start with Lucian O'Brien. Hosting community events at your restaurant, what do you think the relationship between business owners and members of the community they operate within should be? Have there been any particularly rewarding experiences that have come out of your engagement with the local community in your neighborhood?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much positive feedback, and there's so many people who bring their kids to Pizza Bones. And that was, as I don't have kids, and for a long time I wasn't sure if I wanted them. Still kind of not sure if I want them. But there's so many kids who come to Pizza Bones, and that was not part of my thought process at all when I was building Pizza Bones or even in the business plan. It was not targeted to kids. not that it's not now kid friendly, but just something I didn't consider. And I bring it up because lots of families come here and kids run around, and we have chalk for them to use on the patio. And for some kids, it is their first pizza that they eat is pizza bones. And I love the idea of them growing up on eating our pizza and then not enjoying more commercial pizzas. Ours is good quality, and it's nothing high shelf. It's just good quality, and so that is something that's really rewarding. And my boyfriend, who's here a lot and helps a lot, is always trying to get me to come out and talk to the tables and say hello, but I'm much too shy most of the time. But I am happy to make friends and not ignore familiar faces if I see them, because that is another part that is so fun about this city. Just getting people excited about something, whether it's pizza or it's wine or a friendship. I think those are huge roles to play. Does that answer it? Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense. And yeah, again, I can say as a fellow business owner and resident of the neighborhood, I feel like Pizza Bones has become the other community hub alongside Sub Rosa. And I love seeing the kids there. I know that my brother loves bringing his kids there. So especially Saturday mornings has been a wonderful event for those folks with children.
Yeah.
So another question that has come from the audience. As a restaurant owner, what strategies do you use to try and make your restaurant, the industry as a whole, more inclusive for female chefs entering the field? So this touches upon a little bit of what we had talked a little bit about earlier.
Yeah, what a good question. I think by hearing them out and giving them the opportunity, I don't totally believe in a kitchen that's all female or all male. I like to have some sort of balance. And I always just try to make everybody feel heard, whether they are a man or a woman. If someone's having a bad day, instead of sulking around, you just ask them, hey, how's it going? What's going on? Like, is your blood sugar low? Do you need to eat something? Or are you just like having a bad day? And how can we turn it around? Because this is supposed to be fun. It's not the most high paying job in the world. So at least it should be fun. I'm sure I could always do more. Now I'm just like trying to think of like, oh, what should I have a female chef conference? I think the strongest thing to do is just to be friendly and not competitive.
Yeah, and you probably, just as a successful, strong female business owner, are attracting women both intentionally and unintentionally to your workplace, I would imagine.
Yeah. I like this. I like the idea of it.
Yeah. Okay. Another question from the audience. You mentioned learning about the industry by visiting other pizza restaurants, New York City, other than Pizza Bones. What are some of your favorite? Oh, great question. What are some of your favorite pizza restaurants in the U.S. and also outside of the U.S.?
Wow. So cool. Always tough because there's not a lot of pizza that I won't eat. Some of my favorites are, I always go back to Scar's Pizza in New York, because I remember eating it, and it's you walk in and it's just like a counter. It looks like sort of every other New York. I remember eating it and just being like blown away. Like, why is this so good? It looks like it's nothing. Looks like a normal pizza, but it is so good. And I think I learned later that, they do use fresh flour that they mill some in their basement. And I do not know their other secrets, but that is one of my favorites that I've returned to more than once. Lovely's 50/50 in Portland. Also love that she's a lady. That doesn't hurt. but she also uses nice flour that's grown out there in Oregon and Washington. And I know all of her ingredients are very fresh. And I think that comes through in the flavor a lot. And then I'm having trouble remembering of like other major pizza influences outside of the US as well. And I'm sure they exist. But my main goal when I'm eating pizza is ideally to find something that isn't Neapolitan. That's basically just not white flour, or just commercial yeast, because I think those flavors are kind of predictable. And they're definitely still satisfying and they taste good. I feel like I use the word satisfying a lot. I don't know. No, I just feel like it's such a predictable flavor. I'm like, I know how that's going to taste if it's just white flour and it's soft and it's 2 minutes bake or whatever it is.
Yeah, what do I know that you use some of our flour, which is stone ground, but I actually am not even sure if you're willing to give out which ones you use, because I know you buy a few different ones, but which other flours other than white flour do you put in your pizza?
No, I'm happy. I'm very transparent. If anybody has any like specific questions about how we do things here at Pizza Bones, we get whole wheat from you that is from Virginia. No, it's from Pennsylvania. Sorry, I get confused. It's from Pennsylvania.
Sometimes we'll have to sprinkle in the Virginia one, but the one from Pennsylvania is good. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That one. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, we use that. We get it mostly to feed our starter, but I honestly use the whole wheat, and we also get rye from you. That is from Virginia. Both are unsifted, but I use them sort of interchangeably within the levain and the dough. Originally, I used 15% whole rye in the dough, and that's what our like formula book says. But to be honest, I will, when I'm scaling it, I'll do if we need 1 kilo, for instance, I'll scoop 1 bag of rye, one, and I'll alternate scoops of flours to get to 1 kilo.
Okay.
Because the whole wheat makes it softer, and the rye doesn't add much structure, but it adds that grainy cereal flavor that our pizza has. And I thought it was kind of interesting to me and funny, because I just went to a grain conference up in Maine, where I had to use the Maine grains that they provided, but I was pretty unfamiliar with them. So I just got their type 85, which is what most bakers in that area use as their all-purpose. So I used 85% type 80, or it's 80 type 86. And then 15% their whole wheat. But their whole wheat was like really fine, like pretty fine and still very soft. And the color of the dough was very brown. But when I baked it, it did not taste like our pizza. And even though we have just 15% of whole grain incorporated, I feel like our pizza has that more like cereal whole wheat flavor than the one I made with the main grains. But I still want to use the main grains. I just thought it was interesting because it was more brown, so it looked as though it was gonna, mimic our flavor in a certain way. And
it didn't. Yeah, it is interesting, and makes it a little more challenging to use different flours from different regions, but makes it more exciting, I think.
Yeah, it was cool and soft, and I'd like to see if I can get some of their flours down here too.
Yeah, well, we'll keep working on that together. We're also always looking for farmers who can provide the grain. So,
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move on to another question from the audience. You mentioned learning Italian. Has this come in handy during your career?
That's a good question. And I think I always kind of forget to relate the concept of Italy and food, even though it is very much an influence. And after I graduated college and kind of realized I wasn't using my degree in in a way. I kind of freaked out and ended up doing this food studies program in Italy. And it wasn't pizza specific and it wasn't kitchen specific. There were different demos, and we like had sort of field trips where we went into the kitchen of a gelateria or a pizzeria and got to see, you know, how they talk about it and produce it. But it was more about just like this appreciation of agriculture and where they're going and how they're preserved or not, and how they've evolved over time. So I do have an overall fascination and love of food and all things Italian. I guess that's sort of where it started, and I've since, you know, learned to appreciate and learn about, you know, more French culture and Spanish culture. The love for wine has also helped that along or encouraged that. But as far as my speaking of Italian, only a little bit. It's helped me get around Italy. I call it my level of Italian, survival Italian. And at this point, I may or may not have forgotten a lot of it. But I'm sure at a certain point, it can or might still come in handy, maybe even in terms of equipment ordering or testing.
Certainly. Have you had any Italian customers come in to your restaurant, as far as you know?
Really good question. We've had a couple winemakers, and then like I have an old professor who lives around the corner, and I don't really see her coming here super often. I don't know. And it's funny because Italians will eat our pizza and say, wow, this is like Italian pizza. And I don't really think of it that way, but I think it's funny that they do. And I think it's nice that they do. But I would praise overall, we don't get a ton of Italians. I don't know where they are in Richmond or where they eat.
Yeah, I'm not sure how big the community of Italians is here, but that's great that they enjoy your pizza. High praise, I think, coming from the Italians.
Yeah.
Okay, one other question from the community. I kind of forgot to touch upon this about the pandemic and how the pandemic affected you establishing and operating your restaurant, because the timing was kind of right alongside, I believe.
Yeah, that's true. The pandemic was wild, and there is I do feel a bit guilty to admit that it helped me out in a lot of ways, and also one of those ways being it forced me to make pizza, and you know, everything shut down and no one was working, and I started making pizzas out of my house, which was pretty. I look back and I'm like, I just think about what a wild move that was. I had a pizza stone and a gas, like just a regular gas oven in the kitchen. And I had 2 roommates with 1 fridge. And I asked them if it was okay if I sold pizzas out of our house. And I just did like 10 on Saturday and 10 on Sunday. And I had little half sheet trays, and I would hand mix the dough, and I would put it on the sheet tray, and then I would stack the sheet trays in the bottom of the fridge with little like spice containers separating them so that I could like stack them. And I like got a cooler, so I like in the warmer months I just like kept bags of cheese outside in a cooler overnight for when I needed them the next day. And I took orders over Instagram and had like certain like pickup times that I would just like run the pizza out to their car. And it did not take very long when it wasn't just friends who were getting pizza. And that made me really excited and optimistic and grateful, and it gave me confidence, I guess, that, you know, my pizza was good and worth getting, especially to a stranger, like showing up at a stranger's house and just getting some pizza. And it also taught me, you know, how much cheese I would go through per pizza, and just sort of how long they would bake and how many I could get out at a time. So it taught me a lot in many ways, and gave me time to put towards opening this business. And a lot of that's also when I had business friends in town help me out by offering their space or their kitchen. You know, I would do pop-ups at their place once a week during that time, and everything was just to go. And also I'm so fortunate because, and maybe this is how I don't know if it's a chicken or an egg, but pizza is it's a food that not only it's a party food, it's a community food, but it also slides really nicely into a box and you can take it away too. So it's not something you have to plate or make look particularly nice. And so those two things combined came in handy, I guess. The pandemic was all right.
I think we're both fortunate to have items that are easily packaged.
Yeah.
And can you remind me, you opened Pizza Bones 2 years ago?
Yeah. So I got the keys to this space in 2020, which is wild. And then it took so long to get building permits. We didn't actually open until 2021. And we opened with just like a window, like a pickup window. And I don't think we had any like tables or chairs. I don't even know if we had plates. I think I just thought, here's the tray of pizza. Like,
just figure it out.
Yeah.
It sounds like it was kind of maybe a blessing in disguise that you had that year, even though the permits took long and the city of Richmond can move slowly. It sounds like it gave you the opportunity to do a lot of testing and figure things out.
And even just like building a following. And there are people who are like, oh, like I used to get pizza from you years ago, or I donated to your Kickstarter, or whatever it is. Like, I think it is fun for people to follow along, even though it is a stressful time.
Sure. Okay, another audience question. Do you come up with all of the recipes for Pizza Bones? Where do you draw your inspiration from?
I do, until sort of recently. It's hard to relinquish your control over some things, but it also, I think, helps inspire employees to stick around and makes them interested. I think if they are able to have some creative freedom. So that is something I very recently gave over to Annie. But so we do kind of work on things together, and we're at a point where there's lots of things that we recycle depending on the time of year, but most of the time it's our specials are a combination of two things. The first is whatever the farmer has. So when our friends Tompton Farms sends out like their availability for the week of what they have, and right now it's like tomatoes and basil and I don't know what else they have. Cucumbers.
I don't know. Maybe she gives you a different list than she gives us.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, a little bit. But I mean, certain times of year, it's just like radishes and turnips, or escarole, and so those I just see those lists, and I'm like, how can I put that on a pizza, in a way that has acid and heat? Or if it goes with mozzarella, or how can I incorporate this into a sauce or a topping or a finishing topping? And the other fun contributor to our seasonal specials is other food inspirations. We have, I think the best example is our Peter Chang dedicated pizza, like Szechuan style. Peter Chang's is a restaurant here in Richmond, and now they've expanded it into Northern Virginia and Virginia Beach, but it's this Szechuan cuisine, and so I don't know. We love that restaurant and that food, and so we make a pizza here with like a Szechuan, like a Chinese 5-spice sauce. And then there's a layer of mozzarella, and then there's Tompkins, like roasted radishes, and then it's finished with green onion and cilantro. And that is a very popular, very specific, very sort of unconventional pizza. We also make a nacho pizza because I eat a lot of nachos, and I was like, why don't we just put it on a pizza? And I think I actually did that for a different restaurant. I think I did a Christmas party for Fuzzy Cactus, which is like a Tex-Mex sort of punk bar restaurant here in Richmond. And I was looking at their menu, and I was like, I'll do a nacho pizza because they make nachos. And yeah, so it's various things like that, and whatever else anybody has an idea for. Yeah, so seasonality and other like rich flavors or flavors of nostalgia and whatnot.
Yeah, I think we have that in common. Using seasonality is a wonderful way to help determine the menu. Is there a particular chef that you draw inspiration from or that you follow, whether it be a well-known or not well-known chef?
Ben Burkhoff, more than anybody. I used to call him my favorite secret chef of Richmond. I think the best secret chef of Richmond. At this point, he's not so secret anymore. But Ben and I used to have dinner every Tuesday, and he's definitely a chef, whereas I do not I try to refrain from calling myself a chef. I am a baker first and chef maybe, chef second, only because I sort of have to, but it is fun. But usually when I'm preparing something, I'm like, how would Ben do this? We did get his like Caesar salad dressing for our Caesar salad pizza we did recently. And yeah, I think he's just sort of all time, because you want to keep it simple, but have layers of flavors. And I don't like having 20 different methods for preparation. I just want to keep it, you roast this, you marinate that, and then you put them together. I don't want to have 20 different, I want to keep things like simple.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Sure. I'll conclude this wonderful hour with you, Ashley, by asking what you see as the difference between being a baker and a chef.
Oh man. That is tough. I think as a baker, you're, yeah, I mean, I guess zooming out and thinking of it in like logistical terms, you're usually working with an oven if you're a baker, and you're usually working with a stove if you're a chef. And I think baking, and I don't mean like, I guess pastry, when you get into pastry, it works, it's not as like cut and dry as bread baking is, where you have, your 4 ingredients, and then it's all technique after that and experience. And cooking is just like, it's like a whole other layer. It's like being a composer or something. It takes so much more and requires so much more. And I guess baking, I have such a love for it. And I don't want to downplay how difficult it is to bake. I guess it's a very personal thing, and I've always wanted to be that grandma in the kitchen that didn't measure anything. So I'm also not one of those like heavy scientific type A bakers. I've always wanted to be that grandma that just made the perfect biscuits and never measured anything, and again fed all these people, and was just like just a wonder in the kitchen without having to really follow any strict guidelines. Is the dream.
Oh, that sounds lovely. And I can totally relate to you on that. Ashley, thank you so much for being with us today. American Center in Moscow audience, thank you all for tuning in and spending this hour with you. We will hopefully be back with me later on this year, TBD, but I look forward to speaking to you all again. And thank you for sharing your evening with us.
Yeah, thank you.